The moment I realized my wife's sister was about to destroy me, I was sitting in a glass-walled boardroom on the 32nd floor, watching Rory Velden click through a PowerPoint presentation that had my name at the top and my salary, $350,000, displayed in bold red letters for 19 executives to see. "As you can see," Rory said, her voice carrying that particular brand of corporate cruelty that comes naturally to people who've never earned anything themselves, "our consulting division has been operating at a significant loss when we factor in Jace's compensation package." I kept my face neutral, but inside I was cataloging every person in that room who nodded along with her little performance. My wife Cambria sat 3 seats down from me, her expression carefully blank, not meeting my eyes. She'd known this was coming. Of course she had. "The board has decided to restructure this position," Rory continued, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "Effective immediately, Jace will be transitioning to a consulting role at a more appropriate compensation level." Appropriate. The word hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. I closed my laptop with a soft click that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. 19 pairs of eyes watched me stand up, straighten my tie, and walk toward the door. I didn't say a word. Not yet. But as I passed Rory's chair, I leaned down just close enough that only she could hear me. "Enjoy this moment," I whispered. "It's the last time you'll ever have power over me." The elevator ride down to the parking garage gave me exactly 90 seconds to process what had just happened. 90 seconds to understand that my 15-year career at Morrison Tech Consulting had just been flushed away by a woman who'd inherited her position when her father retired, and my wife had sat there and watched it happen. My apartment felt different when I walked in that evening. Smaller, somehow. Cambria was already there, standing in our kitchen with a glass of wine, still wearing the same black suit she'd worn to my execution. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" I pulled a beer from the refrigerator, twisted off the cap. "Seems like you and your sister already covered everything." "Jace, please. This isn't personal." I almost laughed. "Right. Publicly humiliating your husband in front of the entire executive team isn't personal. Good to know." She set down her wine glass harder than necessary. "The company is struggling. We had to make cuts somewhere. Funny how those cuts always seem to land on people who aren't related to the CEO. That's not fair." "Fair?" I took a long pull of my beer, studied her face. She looked tired, stressed. "Good. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about how your sister has been gunning for me since the day she took over. Let's talk about how you've been feeding her ammunition for months." "I haven't." "The Henderson account, the Stratton proposal, the quarterly reviews." I ticked them off on my fingers. "Every time I shared something with you, it somehow found its way back to Rory. Every mistake, every missed deadline, every client complaint." Cambria's face went pale. "You're being paranoid." "Am I?" I finished my beer, set the empty bottle on the counter between us like a barrier. "Tell me something, Cam. When did you decide I was the enemy?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. That night, I lay in our bed listening to her breathe, staring at the ceiling and thinking about revenge. Not the hot, stupid kind that lands you in jail. The cold, calculated kind that leaves your enemies wondering what happened until it's too late to stop it. I'd built Morrison Tech's consulting division from nothing. Brought in over $40 million in revenue over the past 5 years. Made Rory look good to the board while she played politics and took credit for my work. But I'd also been careful to keep copies of everything. Client lists, project files, financial projections. Insurance, I'd called it. Now it looked like I might need to file a claim. The next morning, Cambria was gone before I woke up. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then I made coffee, sat down at my laptop, and started planning the most comprehensive professional destruction in corporate history. First, I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. Cambria's laptop was sitting on her desk in our home office, password protected but not impossible. She'd always been terrible with security, used the same password for everything, our cat's name, plus our wedding anniversary, Mittens 2019. Her email opened like a flower, revealing months of correspondence I'd never seen. Messages to Rory about managing Jace's expectations and preparing for the transition. References to meetings I hadn't been invited to, decisions that had been made without my input. And then I found something that made my hands shake with rage. A thread between Cambria and someone named Mark Daniels from the sales department. The messages were professional at first, discussing quarterly projections and client relationships. But as I scrolled down, they became something else entirely. Can't wait to see you tonight, from 3 days ago. Last night was incredible, from a week before that. Your husband has no idea how lucky he is, from 2 weeks ago. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. My wife wasn't just betraying me professionally. She was having an affair with one of her subordinates, and they were discussing it over company email like a couple of teenagers. Mark Daniels, head of sales, 35 years old, divorced, drove a red Porsche that he parked in the executive section of the garage. I'd seen him around the office, always impeccably dressed, always ready with a joke or a compliment. The kind of guy who made everything look effortless. I scrolled through more messages, building a timeline. The affair had started about 6 months ago, right around the time Cambria had begun working late more often. They'd been meeting at hotels, at his apartment, even in her office after hours. The security cameras don't cover the executive floor after 8 p.m., one message read. We should be safe. Should be safe. I smiled grimly and opened a new browser tab, navigating to the building's security portal. Cambria didn't know I still had administrative access to the system. Another oversight that was about to cost her dearly. The footage was all there. Weeks of it. Cambria and Mark entering her office together, leaving together, touching each other in ways that left no doubt about what was happening between them. I downloaded everything, backed it up in 3 different locations, and started planning phase 2 of my revenge. By the time Cambria came home that night, at nearly midnight, claiming she'd been working on budget projections, I was ready. How was your evening? I asked from the couch, not looking up from my book. Exhausting. These budget cuts are going to be brutal. I'm sure they are. I turned a page. By the way, I'm moving out this weekend. She stopped in the doorway, her purse still hanging from her shoulder. What? I found an apartment downtown, closer to my new office. New office? Now I looked at her, saw the confusion and maybe a flicker of fear in her eyes. I accepted a position with Hartwell Consulting this afternoon. Senior partner. They were very interested in my client portfolio. Jace, you can't what? Take another job? Start over? Move on with my life? I closed my book, stood up. Or can't take my clients with me when I go. Her face went white. Those clients belong to Morrison Tech. Actually, they belong to me. I developed those relationships over 15 years. I brought in the business, and now I'm taking it somewhere it'll be appreciated. Rory will never let you. Rory doesn't get a vote. I walked past her toward the bedroom. Neither do you, not anymore. That weekend, while Cambria was at her sister's house planning damage control, I moved my things out of our apartment and into a sparse 1-bedroom downtown. I took only what was mine: clothes, books, my coffee maker, and a few pieces of furniture I'd bought before we got married. I also took something else. Something Cambria would never miss because she'd never paid attention to it in the first place. A small digital recorder I'd been using for client meetings. The same recorder that had been sitting on her desk for the past month, picking up every phone conversation she'd had with Rory, Every strategy session about how to minimize my severance package, every laugh they'd shared about my inevitable downfall. Hours and hours of audio that painted a very clear picture of conspiracy, professional sabotage, and personal betrayal. Monday morning, I walked into Hartwell Consulting's downtown office as their newest senior partner. By Tuesday, I'd scheduled meetings with 12 of Morrison Tech's biggest clients. By Wednesday, 3 of them had agreed to move their business. By Thursday, Rory Velden was calling me directly. "You son of a—" she started, but I cut her off. "Careful, Rory. This call is being recorded for quality assurance purposes." A pause. "You can't do this, Jace. I'll take you to court." "For what? Accepting a better job offer? Providing superior service to clients who choose to work with me? I haven't broken any laws." "You stole proprietary information." "I took my own work product and my own client relationships. Everything I'm using, I created. Everything I know, I learned through my own experience." I leaned back in my new office chair, looked out at the Chicago skyline. "But please, feel free to try explaining to a judge why you think you own other people's professional relationships." Another pause. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you. I already have everything I need." "This isn't over." "You're right," I said. "It's not." The first domino fell on a Tuesday morning when Morrison Tech's biggest client, Westfield Industries, called an emergency meeting to discuss concerns about service continuity. I wasn't invited, of course, but I didn't need to be. I'd been consulting for Westfield for 8 years. Their CFO, Patricia Wong, had my personal number. "Jace, I need to ask you something directly," Patricia said when she called me that afternoon. "Are you still with Morrison Tech?" "I've moved on to a better opportunity," I told her, "but I'm still very much available to handle your account." "Good, because frankly, the service has been terrible since you left. Nobody there seems to understand our systems or our needs." "I'm not surprised. Rory Velden never bothered to learn the technical side of the business. Can you take us on as a client?" "I'd be honored to." That was $4 million in annual revenue walking out Morrison Tech's door in a single phone call. By the end of the week, 2 more clients had followed. Cambria started calling me on Friday. "Jace, please, we need to talk." "No, we don't. Rory is furious. She's talking about legal action." "Let her talk. I haven't done anything illegal. You're destroying the company." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not propping it up anymore." I was in my new apartment, unpacking the last of my books. "The company is failing because your sister is incompetent and everyone knows it. I was just good enough at my job to hide that fact for a while." "This is about us, isn't it? About our marriage?" I stopped unpacking, held the phone closer to my ear. "What marriage, Cambria? The one where you conspire with your sister to sabotage my career? Or the one where you cheat on me with your subordinate?" Silence. Long, heavy silence. "I don't know what you're talking about," she finally said. "Mark Daniels? Sales department? Red Porsche? Ring any bells?" More silence. "I know about the hotels, Cam. I know about the late nights in your office. I know about the security cameras that don't cover the executive floor after 8 p.m. I sat down on my couch, the one piece of furniture I'd bought since moving out. "I know everything." "Jace." I hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was upset. The anger had crystallized into something colder and more useful. But because I was planning. Cambria and Rory had made this personal when they decided to humiliate me in that boardroom. They'd made it worse when they tried to steal my professional reputation along with my job. But the affair was what pushed me over the edge, the sheer disrespect of it. The casual cruelty of discussing their relationship over company email while planning my professional destruction. They wanted to play dirty. Fine. I'd show them what dirty really looked like. Monday morning, I sent an anonymous email to Morrison Tech's board of directors. Nothing dramatic, Just a simple question about whether they were aware that senior executives were using company resources for personal relationships that might constitute conflicts of interest. I attached a single screenshot. Cambria and Mark in her office at 10:30 p.m. on a Tuesday night, her jacket off, his tie loosened, both of them clearly not working on budget projections. Tuesday morning, I sent another email, this time to the HR department, asking about policies regarding relationships between supervisors and their direct reports. Wednesday, I sent financial records showing that Mark's commission structure had been mysteriously revised upward right around the time his relationship with Cambria began. I never signed my name to anything, never made direct accusations, just asked innocent questions and provided relevant documentation. By Thursday, Morrison Tech was in full crisis mode. "They're investigating us," Cambria said when she called me that afternoon. Her voice was shaking. "HR wants to interview everyone in the sales department." "That sounds stressful," I said. "You did this." "I did what? I don't work there anymore, remember? You and your sister made sure of that." "Don't play dumb, Jace. I know this is you." "Prove it." Friday afternoon, Mark Daniels was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of HR's investigation. Friday evening, Cambria was called into an emergency meeting with the board. Saturday morning, she showed up at my apartment. I almost didn't let her in. She looked terrible. No makeup, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a Northwestern sweatshirt I hadn't seen in years. This wasn't the polished executive who'd watched me get humiliated in that boardroom. This was the woman I'd married 10 years ago, before ambition and her sister's influence had turned her into someone I didn't recognize. "We need to talk," she said. "I thought we covered everything last week." "Please, Jace, just give me 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let her in. My apartment was still mostly empty. A couch, a coffee table, a TV mounted on the wall. It looked like a hotel room, which was exactly how I felt about my life at the moment. "You're destroying everything," she said, sitting on the edge of my couch like she was afraid it might collapse. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not protecting you anymore. The board is talking about firing me." "Maybe they should." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "I made a mistake, okay? It was stupid. It didn't mean anything. It meant something to me. I know, and I'm sorry. But what you're doing to the company, to Rory, this isn't just about me anymore. You're hurting innocent people." I sat down across from her, leaned forward. "Innocent people? Like the 19 executives who sat there and watched your sister humiliate me? Like the board members who signed off on my demotion without even asking for my side of the story? Like the colleagues who've been avoiding my calls since I left? That's different." "How?" "They were just doing their jobs. So am I." She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. "What do you want from me? What will it take for you to stop this?" "I want you to understand something," I said. "For 15 years, I gave everything to that company. I worked 60-hour weeks. I missed vacations, missed family events, missed time with you. I built that consulting division from nothing, and I made your sister look like a competent CEO in the process." "I know. I'm not finished." My voice was harder than I'd intended, but I didn't soften it. "And when the board decided they needed to make cuts, when they needed someone to blame for budget shortfalls that had nothing to do with my department, you and Rory decided I was expendable. You threw me away like garbage, and you did it publicly to make sure everyone knew I was finished." Tears were running down her face now, but I kept going. "Then I find out you've been cheating on me for months. Not just cheating, laughing about it, planning around it, using company resources to facilitate it." I stood up, walked to the window. "So no, Cambria, there's nothing you can give me that will make me stop, because you already took everything I cared about." "That's not true." I turned back to her. "Isn't it? Name one thing I have left that you and your sister didn't try to destroy." She couldn't answer. I want you to leave now, I said. Jace, leave, and don't come back. After she was gone, I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat on my couch, staring out at the city lights. I felt empty, but not in a bad way. Like a house that had been cleared of damaged furniture, ready for something new. My phone rang. Unknown number. Jace Arnell. Mr. Arnell, this is Patricia Wong from Westfield Industries. I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all. What can I do for you? I just wanted to let you know that we've officially terminated our contract with Morrison Tech. Effective immediately, Hartwell Consulting will be handling all of our business. I smiled for the first time in weeks. I appreciate your confidence in us. It's well placed. Also, I've been talking to some colleagues. I think you're going to be getting some calls this week. I look forward to it. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and checked Morrison Tech's stock price. Down 12% in the past week. Not catastrophic yet, but trending in the right direction. I opened a new document and started typing. A detailed timeline of everything that had happened over the past 6 months. Every meeting I'd been excluded from, every decision made without my input, every piece of my work that Rory had claimed credit for. I wasn't planning to publish it. Not yet. But when the time came, and it would come soon, I wanted to be ready to tell my side of the story. The complete, unvarnished truth about Morrison Tech's toxic leadership and the systematic destruction of their most valuable assets. By the time I finished writing, it was nearly 3 a.m. I saved the document, backed it up, and went to bed. Tomorrow, I would start Phase 3. The Morrison Tech quarterly shareholders meeting was held in the ballroom of the Palmer House Hilton, the same venue where Cambria and I had celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary. The irony wasn't lost on me as I walked through the lobby in my best suit, a guest badge clipped to my lapel. I wasn't supposed to be there. Former employees weren't typically invited to shareholders meetings, but I'd bought 50 shares of Morrison Tech stock the day after I was fired, which made me a legitimate shareholder with a right to attend. Rory stood at the podium in a navy blue power suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, delivering the quarterly report with the confidence of someone who believed her own lies. Revenue was down, she explained, but it was a temporary adjustment due to market conditions. The consulting division had been restructured for greater efficiency. Client relationships were being strengthened through new strategic initiatives. I sat in the back row, taking notes on everything she didn't say. She didn't mention that Morrison Tech had lost 8 major clients in the past month. She didn't mention that the consulting division's revenue had dropped by 30% since my departure. She didn't mention the ongoing HR investigation that had already resulted in 2 resignations and 1 termination. When she opened the floor for questions, I stood up. "Rory Velden, right?" I said, loud enough for the microphone to pick up my voice. "I have a question about the consulting division." I saw her face go pale as she recognized me. "I'm sorry, could you state your name for the record?" "Jace Arnell, shareholder." I held up my badge. "I'm curious about your statement that client relationships are being strengthened. Can you explain how losing Westfield Industries, Meridian Corp., and Patterson Holdings constitute strengthening relationships?" Murmurs rippled through the audience. Board members were whispering to each other, looking confused. "Those client departures were anticipated as part of our strategic restructuring," Rory said, but her voice was tight. "Anticipated?" I pulled out a printed email, one of many I'd saved from my time at the company. "Because this message from you to the board, dated 3 weeks ago, describes the Westfield departure as unexpected and devastating to our Q4 projections." The murmurs got louder. Someone in the front row, I recognized him as board chairman Robert Hayes, was staring at Rory with a very unfriendly expression. "I'm not sure how you obtained confidential board communications," Rory said, "but—" "They were sent to my company email address," I interrupted. "The account you never bothered to deactivate after you fired me. along with about 300 other messages detailing the systematic mismanagement of the consulting division. The room was getting restless now. Shareholders were looking at each other, at the board, at Rory. This wasn't the smooth, professional presentation they'd expected. "Security," Rory said into her microphone. "Actually," came a voice from the front row. Robert Hayes was standing up, adjusting his glasses. "I'd like to hear what Mr. Arnell has to say. As a shareholder, he has a right to ask questions." Rory's face was red now, but she couldn't argue with the board chairman. "Thank you," I said. "I have just one more question. Can you explain to the shareholders why the head of your sales department was placed on administrative leave for having an inappropriate relationship with a married executive, and whether that executive's husband's termination might have been retaliation for discovering the affair?" The room exploded. Shareholders were talking over each other, board members were demanding explanations, and Rory was standing at the podium, looking like she wanted to disappear. "This meeting is adjourned," she said. But nobody was listening to her anymore. I walked out of the ballroom feeling lighter than I had in months. Behind me, I could hear Robert Hayes calling an emergency board session for that afternoon. My phone was ringing before I made it to the elevator. "Jace, what the hell did you just do?" It was Cambria, and she sounded panicked. "I asked some questions at a shareholders meeting. It's perfectly legal." "You humiliated Rory in front of 200 people. Rory humiliated herself. I just provided context. The board is furious. They're talking about firing both of us. That's not my problem anymore." "Yes, it is. If this gets out, if the media picks it up, it'll destroy both our careers." I stopped walking, stood in the hotel lobby watching tourists check in and out, living their normal lives. "Cambria, let me ask you something. When you and your sister decided to fire me in front of 19 people, did you think about my career then? That's different. When you started having an affair with Mark Daniels, did you think about how it might affect my reputation if people found out? Jace, when you helped Rory plan my termination while you were sleeping with your subordinate, did you consider that someone might eventually connect those dots?" She was crying now. I could hear it in her voice. "Please. I know I made mistakes, but this is bigger than just us now. There are innocent people who could get hurt." "You're right," I said. "There are innocent people who could get hurt, like the shareholders who trusted Rory to run their company competently, like the employees who are going to lose their jobs when Morrison Tech's stock price collapses, like the clients who were told their accounts would be handled professionally. So, you're just going to destroy everything?" "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just not covering up your mistakes anymore." I hung up and walked out into the Chicago afternoon. My phone kept ringing. Cambria, unknown numbers that were probably reporters, even a call from Mark Daniels that I let go to voicemail, but I ignored all of them. That evening, I was in my apartment making dinner when the local business news came on. Morrison Tech was the lead story. Shares of Morrison Tech Consulting fell 18% in after-hours trading following explosive allegations at today's shareholders meeting, the anchor reported. Former senior consultant Jace Arnell accused the company of mismanagement and suggested that his termination was retaliation for discovering an affair between executives. They showed a clip of me at the microphone, looking calm and professional while Rory visibly fell apart behind the podium. Then they cut to a statement from the board announcing that CEO Rory Velden had been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. I turned off the TV and opened a bottle of wine. The good stuff, a Bordeaux I'd been saving for a special occasion. My phone rang. This time, it was a number I recognized. "Hello, Patricia." "Jace, I just saw the news. Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Better than fine, actually." "Good, because I have some news that might interest you. 3 more companies called me today asking about your services. Word is getting around that you're the one who actually built Morrison Tech's reputation. That's very flattering. It's also profitable. How would you feel about expanding Hartwell's consulting division? I know some investors who might be interested in backing the right person." I looked around my sparse apartment, thought about the empty office space I'd seen downtown, imagined building something new from the ground up, something that belonged to me this time. I'd be very interested in discussing that, I said. After we hung up, I walked to my window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Cambria was probably packing up her office. Rory was probably meeting with lawyers. Mark Daniels was probably updating his resume. And I was planning my next move. The local news had been just the beginning. Tomorrow, the business press would pick up the story. By the end of the week, Morrison Tech would be a cautionary tale about corporate governance and professional ethics. But that wasn't enough. Not yet. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to the Chicago Business Journal's investigative reporter. I'd been following her work for years. She specialized in corporate corruption and executive misconduct. Miss Rodriguez, I wrote, then stopped. That name felt wrong somehow. I deleted it and started over. Miss Patterson, I wrote, I have information about systematic mismanagement and ethical violations at Morrison Tech Consulting that I believe would be of interest to your readers. I attached the timeline I'd written, along with selected emails, financial records, and a detailed explanation of how Rory Velden had used her position to retaliate against employees who threatened her authority. Everything documented, everything verifiable, everything completely legal and utterly damaging. I hit send and closed the laptop. Tomorrow, Morrison Tech would wake up to find their problems had gotten much, much worse, and I would wake up to the first day of the rest of my life. The Chicago Business Journal article ran on Thursday morning with the headline, Morrison Tech, a case study in corporate dysfunction. By noon, it had been picked up by 3 national business publications and 2 local TV stations. I was in my office at Hartwell Consulting, reviewing contracts for 2 new clients, when my assistant knocked on my door. Mr. Arnell, there's a reporter here to see you. Jennifer Walsh from Channel 7 News. I'd been expecting this. Send her in. Jennifer Walsh was younger than I'd expected, probably early 30s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense handshake. She sat across from my desk with a digital recorder between us. Thank you for agreeing to speak with me, she said. I know this must be a difficult time. Actually, it's been quite liberating. She smiled at that. Can you walk me through what happened at Morrison Tech? Start from the beginning. I told her everything. The systematic exclusion from important decisions, the credit taken for my work, the public humiliation in the boardroom, the discovery of the affair, and the evidence of retaliation. Do you have documentation to support these claims? I opened my laptop, turned it toward her. 15 years worth. She spent an hour going through emails, financial records, performance reviews. Her expression grew more serious as she read. This is comprehensive, she said finally. Have you shared this with law enforcement? I haven't broken any laws, and neither have they, technically. This is about professional ethics, not criminal behavior. What about the shareholders? They've lost millions in value since this story broke. The shareholders deserve to know the truth about how their company was being managed. They can make their own decisions about whether to hold the leadership accountable. What's next for you? I leaned back in my chair, looked out at the Chicago skyline. I'm building something new, something better. I have clients who trust me, investors who believe in my vision, and for the first time in years, I'm working for myself instead of for people who see me as expendable. Any regrets? I thought about that for a moment. I regret that it took me so long to stand up for myself. I regret that I wasted 15 years making other people rich while they planned my downfall. But do I regret exposing the truth? Not for a second. The interview aired that evening. I watched it from my apartment with a glass of bourbon, noting how professional and reasonable I came across compared to the clips they showed of Rory's meltdown at the shareholders' meeting. My phone had been ringing all day. More reporters, potential clients, even a few former colleagues who wanted to apologize for their silence during my termination. I'd answered some calls and ignored others, but there was one call I'd been waiting for. It came at 9:30 p.m. Hello, Cambria. I saw the interview. Her voice was flat, exhausted. You looked good on camera. Thank you. The board fired me today, and Rory. Mark too, obviously, but he was already gone. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Really? I considered the question honestly. I'm sorry it came to this. I'm sorry we couldn't find a way to work things out before it got this far, but I'm not sorry that actions had consequences. My career is over, Jace. No one will hire me after this. That's not true. You're smart, you're experienced, you just made some bad choices. You can recover from this. Can we? Can our marriage recover from this? I looked around my apartment. I'd bought some furniture since moving out, a real dining table, bookshelves, artwork for the walls. It was starting to feel like home. No, I said. We can't. She was quiet for a long moment. I know you probably won't believe this, but I did love you. I still do. I believe you, but love isn't enough when there's no trust left. The divorce papers came today. I know. I'm sorry it has to be this way. Are you happy now that you've gotten your revenge? I thought about that question as I walked to my window, looked out at the city lights. I'm not happy about what happened to us. I'm not happy that 15 years of marriage ended this way, but I am happy that I finally stood up for myself. I'm happy that I'm building something that belongs to me. I'm happy that I don't have to pretend anymore. Pretend what? That I was okay with being treated like I didn't matter. That I was okay with being taken for granted. That I was okay with watching you become someone I didn't recognize. Another long silence. I should go, she said finally. Cambria? Yeah. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. Just not at someone else's expense next time. After she hung up, I poured another bourbon and sat on my couch, thinking about the past 6 months. The humiliation, the anger, the careful planning, the systematic destruction of everything I'd helped build. It should have felt hollow, empty, like revenge always does in the movies. But it didn't. It felt like justice. It felt like finally, after years of being undervalued and taken for granted, someone had to face the consequences of treating people badly. My laptop chimed with a new email. Patricia Wong, forwarding a message from a potential client in Seattle. A tech startup looking for consulting services, referred by someone who'd read about my situation and was impressed with how I'd handled it. Thought you'd want to see this, Patricia had written. Your reputation is growing, the right kind of reputation. I opened the startup's message, read through their needs and budget projections. It was exactly the kind of innovative, challenging work I'd always wanted to do but never had time for at Morrison Tech. I started typing a response, outlining how Hartwell Consulting could help them achieve their goals. As I wrote, I found myself smiling. Not the cold, calculating smile of the past few months, but something warmer, something that felt like hope. Outside my window, Chicago glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Morrison Tech's offices were probably empty, their stock price in free fall, their reputation in ruins. And somewhere else, new opportunities were being born. New companies were starting up. New ideas were taking shape. I finished my email to the Seattle startup, hit send, and closed my laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new clients, new possibilities. But tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I could finally move forward instead of looking back. The revenge was complete. Morrison Tech was finished. Cambria's career was in ruins, and Rory Velden would never again have the power to destroy someone's life on a whim. But more importantly, I was free. Free to build something better. Free to work with people who valued integrity over politics. Free to be the person I'd always been before 15 years of corporate compromise had worn me down. I raised my glass to the city lights, to new beginnings, to the hard-earned knowledge that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to keep playing by other people's rules. Here's to never being expendable again, I said to the empty room. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I meant it.